past. Due to the pandemic, we look forward to providing events with useful suggestions for all community members. Therefore, we designed this webinar series. Here, I have two co-hosts to help me, Dr. Meilan Chen, who is our Vice President, and Ms. Esther Chiu, who is our Digital Media Manager. They will help us to go over the chat room and manage participants' questions. Today is the first webinar about Chinese language learning in a digital age. The preservation of a minority language heritage in an anglophone society is full of difficulties. In the audience, we have many enthusiastic teachers and principals of Chinese language schools from many areas. We hope that today's webinar will offer us a brainstorming opportunity to further improve the Chinese language learning experiences for the future generations. Our speaker is Dr. Oliver Du, 杜立崑医师. Dr. Du runs the website Chinese Debate International, holding the principle that the goal to learn Chinese language is for application, not for taking exams. 中文是学来用的，不是学来考试的。Dr. Du promotes the concepts of building a Chinese language ecosystem. And in October 2020, Dr. Du features in an article on Crossing, a blog affiliated to 天下 magazine. Here, I'm giving the floor to Dr. Du. Please, thank you.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you for that wonderful and introduction, Catherine. And I'm Dr. Oliver Tu, and I'm honored to have been invited to deliver the talk today on the promotion and preservation of Chinese language heritage. I think some participants are still trying to get in. I was letting them in, so I think somebody else better take a look and let the folks in. So it's not do you see it? Okay, all right, thank you. This talk will be based on my family's experience from homeschooling Chinese and for my two daughters, and subsequently starting a blog back in 2014 on the subject, and then starting a Facebook group to connect with other like-minded parents, and more recently starting with my daughters a online Chinese debate school, a platform for classes in collaboration with debate coaches in Taiwan. I'm conducting this talk in English as I think this is sort of the common denominator for the participants. I think we have a national-wide audience with some members of my Facebook group joining from all over the country. So thank you very much for coming. We have a lot of material to cover, so without further ado, let me proceed. The key points I want to make is that Chinese, as you know, is very difficult to pass on to our subsequent generations. There are key differences between how our children learn English and Chinese in the US, and the preservation of language heritage requires breaking barriers. I myself, I am a physician. I'm not a linguistic expert, so these are just based on our family's experiences, and we did not go through the usual traditional weekend Chinese school route. So there are things that I probably don't know about how those schools conduct their practices. So certainly, I think there's a lot of room that I can learn also from your approach as well. In terms of disclosure, of course, we launched the Chinese Debate International, iChineseDebate.com. So, of course, I have some interest in that, but really, it's just a platform to connect the coaches in Taiwan with the students here, so that they can learn Chinese debate. This is my family back in 2007, and end of last year, my wife Ewan and I are both physicians. I was a nephrologist, a kidney specialist for over a dozen years. And in the last couple of years, I switched to becoming a hospitalist, a hospital-based physician, currently a frontline worker, sometimes taking care of COVID patients. My wife is an oncologist, takes care of cancer patients. We fortunately have both got our 2 shots of the vaccine from Pfizer and back in January, and we did fine. And so I encourage during this time that qualified and suitable public to get their vaccines. It's a terrible time in our nation and the world, of course. We have 2 daughters, Caroline, the older one, and the younger one, Christine. They're 3 years apart. This is to the left is our picture from last year. This is a quick timeline of me and my family. Due to time constraint, I'm gonna kind of go right to 2007 or so. Our daughters were born in 2003 and 2006 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where we did our medical trainings. In 2007, we moved to a small town in eastern North Carolina called Goldsboro, about an hour east of Raleigh, kind of like in the middle of nowhere, really. And it's a town of 30,000. We didn't have any ready access to weekend Chinese school, so we sort of have to do our own thing. I initially started homeschooling, then with the help of several au pairs over the years from Taiwan, nannies, young nannies, but we couldn't find any more of them after my older one turns about 10 and my younger one is about 7. So I did most of the instructions for my kids afterwards. In 2014, after we have some success in our program at home, I start sharing them in a blog I call Chinese English bilingual.org or cbilingual.org, and subsequently starting a Facebook group called Raising Bilingual Children in Chinese and English, hoping to connect with a like-minded family who want to be equally or more aggressive in terms of their Chinese language program. In 2017, we had an expected relocation to Atlanta on short notice to do job offers there. So it was great. We always look forward to moving to a big city. So here we are. After we moved here, we saw that indeed there was a large crowd of a Chinese-speaking community. So my daughters were already learning the guitar in North Carolina. So we started a family Chinese pop band, playing many of the local events here throughout the year. We probably have about 6 performances a year for about 2 years until COVID hit. Then in 2019, my daughters have the wonderful opportunity to participate in probably the first ever the Chinese debate team at the secondary school level in Atlanta. And the whole team, after several months of intense training, went to Taipei and Taiwan to participate in a international debate competition. That was a very fruitful experience for all of them. And then, of course, last year, COVID came upon us and went online. Then last summer, I saw my family, my daughters and I, we saw how good Chinese debate class and teams what they can offer to students here. And we particularly want to offer them to younger students, say in the late elementary school and middle school. So we collaborated with the debate coaches in Taiwan to start this program. And toward the end of last year, we had out 10,000 parent members join the Facebook group, Raising Bilingual Children in Chinese English. Was a big milestone for us, and we're very thankful for that. So why is Chinese so hard to pass on? You all know that to be true. So for me, there are several issues. These are not the only issues, but these are the issues that I think are important for me and my family. As you know, that Chinese and English are in completely different languages families, and Chinese is one of the languages most difficult to learn for English speakers, and we'll go through some data on that. Chinese, of course, in the country, in the US, is a minority language or widely used only a few select enclave. And there are just not many opportunities for Chinese language application at the secondary school level, which I think can be channeled towards college application. I think that was one of the things that limiting their adaptation by families and students. Have there been more opportunity for that? I think there would be a lot more interest. I think. I mean, yes, kids, they can learn, Chinese art, Chinese dance, and Chinese instrument, for example. However, those are not language-intensive application, and so those kind of separate category. So I think college values Chinese language proficiency simply as another subject, another AP score, for example. And for those families and students who want to go the extra step and pursue a little bit, higher proficiency level, frequently they, take the AP exam. And as I'll show later, most of the students are probably, heritage students who end up taking the test, get a very good score 4 or 5. So it probably, I'm not a college admission officer, but it probably limit their, how impressive it looks to the colleges, despite all the effort that we have to put into to achieve that. I think, all these affect parents' attitude, capability, and willingness towards passing on our language heritage. And so those are some of the aspects that I think are important. Let's go through some of the language proficiency scale. This is the interagency language roundtable that I often use. The IAR level, this is used at the federal level service, including the Foreign Service Institute, which is the predecessor to the National Foreign Affairs Training Center. They divide language proficiency, foreign language proficiency into 6 levels, from 0 to 5, 0 being no proficiency with occasional isolated words, and 5 being native or bilingual proficiency. I attended college here, upstate New York, my wife in the Boston area. And, we know a lot of second generations, American-born Chinese, Taiwanese, and probably more from Taiwan side at that time back in the early 1990s. They grew up here. Many of them went through the standard weekend Chinese school, 2 hours a week. Many of their parents started Chinese school back in the 1970s and so forth for their kids to have this opportunity. But based on our experience interacting with our peers in college, most of them are not comfortable conversing in Chinese, and I think you all know that to be the true, especially back then. So I think for them, despite years of Chinese school, their proficiency level in this scale will be probably level 1 or 2, with a very select few 3. Later on, depending on their professional need, that may change, but at least when they finish high school, that's sort of their proficiency level in my point of view. I think the IR level 3 is the sweet spot where I would be shooting for if I, given that I'm a parent, and if I want to be more reassured that I am able to pass this language heritage to my children to a sufficient level that I think they would be able to pass it on to their own children, to yet another generation. So this is not just for them, it's also for my grandchildren. So I want to be able to pass it down and replicate the process. As you can see, at this level, they should be able to speak Chinese with sufficient accuracy and vocabulary. They shouldn't be searching for words. They should be doing that on topics involving their practical day-to-day living situation, social activities. And of course, you have to think of this, this is for adults. In terms of professional topic, you have to sort of adjust that for their age and maturity level. If they are particularly interested in say robotics or math or dance and whatnot, they should be able to talk about their particular interest in Chinese with reasonable ease. They shouldn't be searching for words. There should be interactive with native speakers using the language. So this is equivalent to ACT-FL, another scale, advanced to superior scale. When I was looking it up online, they don't have exact equivalent, but that's sort of the level. Now, according to the, I think somebody's playing the piano. Please mute your microphone. Thank you. In terms of the Foreign Service Institute, based on their 70 years of experience teaching foreign language to U.S. diplomat, to reach IAR level 3 in speaking or reading, okay, it takes about 2,200 class hours to do so, and probably half of that time spent studying in that country. And as you can see, Mandarin Chinese is right there along with the other languages you see. This compared to to category 1 languages, which are mostly Germanic or Romance language with a great similarity to English. So it's almost 4 times as long. And then you can see here that they have to do 3 to 4 hours per day of self-directed study. So if you add it together, it's close to about 5,000 hours for these adult diplomats who are motivated to learn these languages. Okay, it takes about 5,000 hours. And if you divide that, if you try to do it like 2-3 hours a day, it takes about 5 to 8 years to do this. So, Chinese is difficult, and it is just plain simple as that. So these are the AP distribution score over the last 6 years from our College Board. As you can see, about 60% of the students get a score of 5, about another 15% get a score of 4. So about 3/4 of them get a score of 4 or 5. So it's probably a little bit less than impressive to the maybe to the college when they're looking at it. If they see, oh, you're a heritage student, of course, that they might take that for granted, even though they don't know how much it takes to achieve these scores. Now, in terms of parents' view about passing on these languages is based on the Pew Center research. They published a paper in 2012, The Rise of Asian Americans. About 45% of Asian Americans say it's very important to them that future generations speak their native languages. Korean top the pack here, and Chinese Americans or Chinese, anybody who speaks Chinese, it could be from Malaysia, for example, and about half of those surveys say it's very important. And this compared to 75% of Hispanics who say it's very important for them for their future generation to be able to speak Spanish. And I think this affected how Asian Americans who are US born to be able to speak their quote unquote ancestral language or language of origin with their parents and so forth. So as you can see, only in this survey, about 14% of Asian Americans, they didn't break it down into different languages, but over 14% to say they can speak those languages very well, and a full 2/3 of them can speak only a little or not at all. Compare that to the largest minority in the country, the Hispanics, 18% of the population at this point, even down to, as you can see, 3rd generation or higher, about half of them speak Spanish to their children. We probably don't have many 3rd generation parents. Probably most of them will be 2nd generation parents at this point. And my daughters are kind of like 2.5 generations because I was a youth immigrant. So even for 2nd generations, I think we'll be lucky. We don't have I couldn't find any data on that, but I think we'll be lucky for 2nd generation Chinese heritage parents to speak Chinese to their kids. So we lag very far behind. I think this reminds me the Hispanic population here to the Chinese Malaysians, Malaysian Chinese in Malaysia. About 25% of the population in Malaysia is of Chinese heritage. They are probably the only country, as far as I know, outside of China and Taiwan that has a comprehensive and complete educational system based in Chinese. Their debate teams are very good at the secondary school or college level. So what can parents do to pass on this heritage? I think you have to look at the way that our kids learn English versus Chinese in the country. obviously the pace of instruction for English is native level. It's much faster than Chinese, which is often conducted more of a pace of a second language level. So the pace of instruction is much slower. In terms of interactivity, of course, our kids get to play with their peers, mostly English. In fact, they can go to Chinese school, and then right after class, they'll speak English to their kids. So that's based on what I observed, so the interactive level is just very low for Chinese. I mean, for English, all the teachers and everything like that, they go out there, everything's in English, and so they have a lot of opportunity to practice with a variety of different people. So the breadth exposure is wide. Okay, so for English, of course, besides their classes, their extracurricular activities, they could do dance, music. A lot of them are conducted in English, robotics, different academic teams and whatnot, all in English, or most of them. Compare that to Chinese, the breadth exposure is much more limited. The opportunity for language applications, of course, for English is many. Besides the usual class assignments, they do oral reports, presentations, research papers. Later on, they do sports in English and robotics and all these things. So the opportunity for application is many, but for Chinese, they're very few. Relatively compared, speaking for obvious and practical reasons, of course. But I think these limited, this task of passing on this heritage, particularly in the secondary and high school, level, I think the lack of opportunity for language-intensive application purposes for Chinese really hinders this task for us, and for practical reasons. So back to my family, in terms of my Chinese proficiency, I finished 5th grade in Taiwan before immigrating to abroad. I didn't take any Chinese classes until maybe junior year in college. I took one class into some reading classes, but during the high school, I was fortunate to get my hands on some Kung Fu novels, Jin Yong, Gulong's novels from friends, and had to read them behind my parents' back along with my siblings. Because we were kind of focusing on coming to the States, I was in the Caribbean in the Dominican Republic at the time. But unfortunately, based on due to those experiences of reading these Kung Fu novels, I was able to maintain a lot of my proficiency level. Even to this day, I can hardly write Chinese except for the most basic characters. I mean, I can type, but I mean, you show me the characters, I know how to write in the correct stroke sequence, some of the basic ones. Yes, I do. But if you want to say just write a letter to my parents, handwriting, I don't know how. I have to look up dictionary, And well, speaking of looking up dictionary, I don't even know how to look up characters using a traditional Chinese dictionary using the radicals. So my daughters, I think, know the radicals better than I do. So, but thank goodness with the technology that we are able to get around all those limitations, and it hasn't hindered my ability to communicate and to even in text manners. I just type using Zhuyin, and then I'm a lot slower, but it hasn't hindered my application ability, I would say. So I would say my proficiency level is probably at grade school, 5th or 6th grade in Taiwan. But I was like, well, I can do everything I want to do in Chinese, just fine. I can read newspaper, I can read novels, I can watch TVs, I can write, articles. If I want to write a book on it, I say, sure, I can do that. In fact, I could probably write in English if somebody else is translated, but, pay somebody else to do that, or can write it in Chinese and then just have the editors and whoever it is to edit it and refine it for me. And I think that's perfectly doable. So, because of that, when we have our daughters, I was like, well, grade school level by the time, or in Taiwan, grade school level in Taiwan or China, by the time they finish high school before they leave us for college will be more than sufficient. So I think that's probably somewhere around level 4 or 3+ for them. So, based on what we observe of our college friends during college, I knew that if we gone through the usual route, at least in the early 2000s, when we have our daughter, sort of the impression I got is that, we'll probably end up the same, for our daughters, that they won't be comfortable talking to us in Chinese, and they can hardly read novels or newspapers and whatnot. So I was like, well, also at that time, we didn't have any Chinese school available to us. So we're like, well, we sort of have to do our own things. So we set Chinese as our priority, and we say we will use only Chinese at home. So these days, I speak 95% of the time Chinese to them. And there are things, since I left Taiwan when I was 11, there are things that I don't know how to express in Chinese, and that's okay. I learn it, I look things up, and I'll look it up and say, hey, Daddy don't know it. I'll look it up and let's learn it. Or these days I say, why don't you look it up and tell us how people actually use it? And it's okay. And many parents in my Facebook group, they're second generations. They lost a lot of the Chinese that they learned in their youth. So they're trying to teach their kids Chinese, and they start to relearn some of the Chinese that they learned before in their youth, and their Chinese got better also over time, probably up to a certain level, but they get better. So they teach their kids Chinese, they improve also. And so basically what I'm saying is that it's okay if your Chinese is not all that proficient. Your kids are young, they don't, you don't need much in the beginning, and you can sort of relearn some of the stuff along with your kids and improve over time. So we create this Chinese language ecosystem at home, and basically everything at home is Chinese based. Based on talking to other families who are more successful in raising their kids in Chinese, until the age of 9 or 10, based on my kind of informal survey of those families, I came up with this 66% rule. Basically, if you want your kids, by about third grade or so, if they want their Chinese to be, level 3 or better, I think the proficient, they have to spend about 2/3 of their waking hours in the Chinese environment, this CLE. I coined this term several years ago in my blog, and you say, well, but they go to school. But I'm going to tell you, my girls go to American schools, regular English school, and that's 180 days of instruction. During those days, about half the time they spend in school. So that's 25% of the time of their waking hours in the whole year. So that leaves you with 75% of the time that you potentially can devote to Chinese. So that's what I observe in other families, a lot of them second generation or youth immigrant family that they've done well in their program. We do a large amount of reading and only basic writing. They did a little bit more writing at the beginning. They know how to write the correct stroke sequence and some of the basic words. Yeah, sure, they know how to do that. You show them the character, they know how to write it with correct sequence, stroke sequence. But after third grade or so, we didn't do much writing. I mean, I'll have them to write some of the vocabularies maybe 10 times, and then staggered, over a period of time. But we did a large amount of reading. We did a lot of read aloud in the beginning, and then reading, bridge readers, and then novels and whatnot. Basically by the end of the third grade, about 8, 9 years old, so we try to achieve sort of the end of the second grade read proficiency level in Taiwan and probably in China. I think the Chinese curriculum is tougher in the beginning, so maybe end of this middle of the second grade, in China. And why 8 to 9 years old? I think at that age, that's the time that kids in their English journey change from learning to read to reading to learn. So at that age, I think the kids have to be able to read material in Chinese that is suitable for their maturity and interest. One book to go by, I think it's Harry Potter. If they can start to read Harry Potter in English, and they can only read material such as Three Little Pigs in Chinese, it would not be a surprise that the kids will be more interested in learning more and more English rather than Chinese. So I think by that age, their Chinese have to be proficient enough that they can enjoy reading materials suitable for their interest and maturity level. I think that's one key. So in terms of Chinese language art curriculum, I think you can use all kinds of curriculum. Okay, just like you can, all kinds of English curriculum that people can, learn English from. You can all use all kinds. We end up using a standard textbook from Taiwan, just hand-me-downs from relatives and family in Taiwan, and that works fine. We didn't go through all the exercises, for example, in those 参考书, study guides. We just, did basically reading. We just have them, read to fluency those textbook passages. You have to read it fluently. And then I'll have them practice, later. Later on, I just have them, practice some of the new vocabularies, just write them 10 times, maybe 4 or 5 each day, and then sort of stagger them, over time. And the amount of time we devote to instruction per se is probably about 45 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week. And that's what we did. I think the pace of instruction is the most important thing, that by the end of the 3rd grade, they sort of have to, arrive at the end of 2nd grade textbook. So they'll be able to read those very proficiently by that age. So in terms of traditional verse simplified, 注音, pinyin, or no phonetics support, I think it really doesn't matter. I've seen, family, parents, kids who succeed in any combination. And I think there's some advantage to using phonetics, but it's not absolutely necessary. And in terms of traditional simplify, whatever the parents are most comfortable in, it's fine. I mean, we'll be lucky if they can read Chinese proficiently and speak them proficiently in either. Okay, so I think that's very minor consideration. My daughters, they spent 6 to 8 weeks in Taiwan for a few summers between the age of 5 to 10. In fact, they attended the public school for the month of June a few times. It was a great experience. They get to play with peers in Chinese, and my younger daughter was very popular when she got back in Taiwan. That is, went back in Taiwan. Very good experience for them. I don't think this is absolutely necessary. I've seen kids who didn't have that luxury and experience in Taiwan or China, and they do very well in their language journey. I think the instruction is only part of this journey. Okay, I mean, you've got the textbook. Okay, what you need to do to instruct your kids in Chinese, it's very straightforward. Okay, you just follow the curriculum. Okay, you've got the curriculum, you've got the textbook, you just kind of go through them, have them read to fluency. I think that's the easy part of this journey. I think the tougher part is the psychological construct to build them, to allow them to be willing to continue on this journey in a quote unquote more aggressive manner, more intensive manner. Building the psychological construct is the much tougher part. Since they don't use, most of them, don't use Chinese at school and in their classes, extracurricular activity, peers and whatnot. So I think with the CLE, they have to provide meaningfulness, joy and laughter, a lot of joy and laughter in this environment. I think that's the key. That's the tougher part to do. So they have to, have that in order for them to be willing to continue in this journey. Otherwise, it becomes another story that, I think a lot of kids, from what I heard, growing up, there's like, oh, they hated Chinese school, they hated writing and all that stuff, and they rebelled, and then eventually the parents have to stop sending them to Chinese school, and that was that. And so, because I think they don't get enough joy, it's just not as meaningful, to them to continue in this journey, and so it becomes tougher and tougher. In terms of the non-academic Chinese, I use the concept 先入为主. For example, all the materials that they were encountering in English later on inevitably in their life, we give them to them, provide them way earlier in Chinese. For pop songs, movies, cartoons, everything that I can think of in English, I introduce them early on in Chinese. So it's natural for them that it's just part of their life, their environment at home, and that's become standard for them. At least early on until later, as they get to be tweens and teens, but then by that time, most of the foundation has been built, and you're sort of more or less set in this journey. Now, in terms of more academic language, some parents may ask, for us, you can use what I call the scaffold reading experience. I think as they get older and what they learn become more academic, they can learn it in their stronger languages. They can learn in English just fine. They can natural science or whatever, they can learn it in fourth grade or whatever. They can learn it in English. They learn the content, and then the following year you sort of introduce them to some of the same concept in the Chinese. By that time, they don't have to learn both the content and the language at the same time, which is tougher since Chinese often they're a weaker language. So you just provide them, now that they've known the content, you just provide them the some of the vocabularies and way to discuss it with them, and that's easier that way. Now for kids who are very strong in their Chinese, and there's a few, they can learn some of the content and the Chinese language together, and that's great, and that's fantastic. So for us, my daughters have independent English and Chinese entertainment ecosystem. They can completely enter themselves in either language. They derive a lot of joy and laughter in either. So particularly in Chinese, they love it. And we'll talk more about that later. So I have two daughters. So we plan to have at least more than one child, of course, when we have family. So I know raising my older daughter initially that I have to prioritize her Chinese, because when my younger one, when she starts to learn to speak, if her older sibling, speak English to her and is more comfortable speaking English and they're speaking English, I think that would deal a big blow to my program for my younger daughter. So for us, we prioritize my older daughter's Chinese for the first 8-9 years or so. So this is what I call open the gap, the language gap. So it's not that we don't do English. I mean, all schooling and stuff like that is English. It's just that we don't place particular emphasis on it. So we open this language gap for us to be sure that my should be proficient in expressing herself and speaking Chinese to a younger sibling. And then later on in the late elementary school and then middle school, then she can catch up in her English. And based on a whole generation of youth immigrants who immigrated to the States around 10 years old, we know that's perfectly feasible. It's tough. Yes, it's tough. Okay, but we know it's perfectly feasible. My brother-in-law, myself, and my wife, they did it just fine. They do well in their SAT, go to good colleges, Ivy League colleges or the equivalent, and they can close this language gap by the time they hits high school sometime during that. So based on those experiences, I feel comfortable to do this approach. Now, some parents are maybe first-generation immigrants who immigrated to the States after college. They may be uncomfortable with this approach because they'll be like, well, I don't know, my kids, I want to make sure that their English is good enough and all that stuff. So, but based on past generation of youth immigrant, that's perfectly feasible. It's very tough, but it's perfectly doable, and a lot of people do it this way. So the gender and the intellect certainly affect this whole process. There are some very intelligent, highly intelligent kids who can handle multiple languages and very proficiently at the same time. I'm seeing it, and they can do it just fine. But for some, more run-of-the-mill, the regular kids, you might have to concentrate early on in one language and then kind of catch up in other languages. In terms of gender, we all know that girls are stronger linguistically early on, so we can see that in many of the parents in my Facebook group and in the debate classes as well, that we have a disproportionate number of girls compared to boys. There are boys who are very proficient. It's lopsided. So that's part of what I observed. I think these days, even a few years for family with younger kids than us, even a few year difference make a big difference because for us back in the early 2000s, internet is not developed in terms of resources, but these days with all these knowledges out there and available online multimedia, the YouTube, Netflix, a lot of Chinese program there, instant connectivity with the events and people in Asia. I think many of these younger families are starting even a more intensive program than we did, and at an earlier age, and they do even better than we have done. So I think that's very encouraging and fantastic that we are able to get our experiences out there and pave the road for many families through our platforms. So back to my kids, by third grade, they're able to read comic books. These are some of the ones that I enjoyed as kids myself, and it's very good that my kids are able to enjoy the same thing. I went back to Taiwan and bought a lot of these used books and bring it back. My older daughter could read these comic books about 8 years old. My younger daughter at 7 started reading Doraemon. At that time, I'll say that she could read about half the characters, but it hasn't deterred her from reading, picking up, very interesting. And so she started reading more, and even up until a few years ago, to 12 or so, this is her favorite book. She read and reread it on her own time. She read it while she's eating at our dinner time, like put that away, so, but, she loves it, so, and, she read a lot of different comic books, they all did. And as you can see, this is the end of a second grade text in Taiwan, at least the one we used, used copy. And as you can see, if you get to this, you can read these fluently. I think they can read comic books and chapter books just fine, at least starting around that age. For us, starting at 6, 7 or so, they read these chapter books with the phonetic support and more complexity until, for example, at 9 years old, my younger daughter is reading the Narya in Chinese without phonetics, and she read it just fine. Some parents ask me, should I be worried about the kids relying on the Zhuyin Fuhao phonetics, pinyin too much? If I take it away, they don't know how to read it. My answer is that they just haven't read enough. They just haven't read enough. Okay, so at her fastest pace, my younger daughter, she could read text with phonetic support with Zhuyin Fuhao, probably at 800 to 1,000 characters a minute by my calculation. If I show her equivalent material text without the phonetics, she read it at about half the speed. Okay, she read it, and this is back when she was like 8, 9 years old. So she read it, at 400 to 500 characters a minute. And I actually give her reading comprehension questions to do, and that's the speed she read it at, and she get like almost all of them correct. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess you could read it just fine. And even without the phonetic support, half the speed, it's just fine. At that speed, they really aren't looking at those phonetics. So just take away the support. They're a little bit slower, but it's fine, not a problem. So these are some of the things my kids grew up in, where they're before 10 or so. They grew up listening to Jay Cho, SHE, Jolin Chai. They started listening to these at 1 year old. I say I want to introduce them early. Yeah, I introduced them early. So I think they listen to these Chinese Mandarin pop songs more than Chinese lullabies. So we continue to love these music. They continue to, and we even perform some of these music ourselves in our family band. They watch a lot of Disney movies in Chinese, DreamWorks, and a lot of the Studio Ghibli in Chinese, of course. Back then I had to get all these DVD forms from Taiwan to show it to them. And so you can see that watching Disney and all these American movies in Chinese is great because linguistically it's in Chinese, and in terms of culturally they're able to share common things with their peers at school and friends. So that's how we did it. So back in 2014, after we have sort of some success in our program, I went online to, all throughout the time, really, I was looking for online information to families who have gone before us, who have succeeded in their program. I know that there are people who've done just fine, last generation and whatnot. It's just that it weren't shared. They weren't shared online. I found some websites, some blogs by young parents back then, indeed, but they stopped writing when their kids are 6 or 7, really. So I know why, because it becomes tougher to continue with their program because how tough it is. So they stopped writing. And since at least online, we have some success, we're like, well, let me get that information out there to help other parents and know that, to let them know that it is feasible and that it's doable. And this is what we've done and what you can learn from it. So this was my first entry back in 2014. And then this was my most recent entry. These days I don't update it quite as much. So shortly after I started this program, I want to connect with family members with similar mindset. So I started this Facebook group called Raising Bilingual Children in Chinese and English. It was slow to start, but over time we built up parent members. And I was fortunate to have a couple people help me, Virginia Duan and Dr. Betty Choi, who's a pediatrician. I think they're based, I know Virginia is based out of California. I think Betty most likely is also. And they have their own website related to language kind of website. And they are really the one who helped me do the day-to-day operation to manage the website for me. And we basically only allow the parents or to-be parents to join. We don't want people with a lot of commercial interest in it. We don't want people who are doing a lot of marketing come and use our parent as a marketing platform for them. So basically only allow parents to join our group. It's a very active group, especially with a core group of parents who share their experiences. We have a lot of second generation families and a lot of first generation family as well, or just a regular non-heritage family whose kids are in the immersion program and they want to learn more about it, a different way to support their child. We have people all over the country and some from abroad, Europe, Australia, even Singapore. And very pleased. And around the beginning of the year, our 10,000 parent members joined. It was a big milestone for us. And I think we have an additional about 400 members joined since then. Back to my kids, after my older child, she started learning, she started to read these material, reading novels without phonetics about 10 years old. A little bit later, my younger child, and then I share with them some of the stuff that I read in my youth. Chong Yao, Liu Ge Meng, I think many of you probably know this. We read two of the stories, the first two stories, and discussed them. And then we watched the movie 那些年我们一起追的女孩, very popular movie from Taiwan, I don't know, 7-8 years ago or so. And then by Zhou Baodao, and then she read the novel several times throughout the next few years. Very interested in that. At that time, she was in 7th and 8th grade in North Carolina, and she was her English picked up quite a bit, and she was reading a lot of English novels. I think she read like 100 English novels a year for those 2 years. She was captain of the Battle of the Book Club in her school, competing to, going to competitions and stuff like that. So she was very interested in, of course, American young adult literature. So I buy her a lot of these translated work for her to read, and she read them just fine. Reboot, Rebel by Amy Tintera, My Sister's Keeper, made into a movie also. It's more difficult for her, the medical stuff and the deeper stuff. She had to put it away, the 姐姐的守护者. She had to put it away the first time she tried to go through it, and then have to come back to it maybe a year and a half later and finish reading it. And the Selection series by Kira Kass, that's supposedly pretty popular for teens, maybe girls in the States. And of course, this is in Chinese, kind of like The Bachelor, supposedly, in novel form. Enders and Starters. Ender's Game made into a movie. We watched the movie. She read the novel just fine. Anna and the French Kiss. So she read a lot of these in the translated format, and this really affected her writing at that time as well. Not to say writing, but more composition. Like I say, she didn't write much, but in middle school she was doing a lot of more time back then. Of course, middle school she was doing a lot of writing her own short stories and novels, short novels in the English. So I was like, why don't you write something in Chinese? So, by that time, she learned how to type already, just herself, using the kind of equivalent. Just gave her a table, showing the equivalent pinyin corresponding to the zhuyin, and so she, just typed things up herself and learned how to type. So you can see this is part of her story. To me, it might not be 100% perfect, but it's pretty good, and it read like a translated work to me, actually. So what they read really affect their writing. So for me, even though she didn't do much composition before much writing, it hasn't affected the way she can compose by typing. I would rather that they can read at a, say, 8th grade, 9th grade level, or novels and whatnot. Then automatically when they compose, I think she will probably compose at a 5th grade level or whatnot. I think compare that to not concentrating as much time to reading and doing a lot of writing, and then some of the kids might have a problem with that. But then, for example, you get to by the time they're 18, they can read the 3rd grade, 4th grade material in Chinese. But then if you compose, they'll probably compose at a 2nd or 3rd grade level. So for me, reading is much more important because you automatically bring up their that's the foundation for their writing as well, at least to me. I mean, they don't have to write, do a technical writing or have to be 100% grammatically correct and all that stuff for native speakers. But if they can write something like this, I think it'd be more than fine. So around 13 years old, we start tackling Sendiao Xiaoli. This is a famous Kung Fu series. It's a different. By that time, they watched the cartoon version and the TV series, and I have to use the phonetics in the beginning for her to get used to the writing for maybe several of the chapters, and then afterwards, she can read the rest of the 4 books herself just fine. And my younger one started reading these when she was 12, and that was fine. And they're not particularly into Kung Fu novels, even though they love the TV series. These are some of the movies and TVs that we watched over time. Some of the ones at the top, both my daughter watched, and some of the bottom ones, and my younger daughter watched with me. And some of the bottom, I mean, even these, she watched it herself. A lot of these are available in Netflix, YouTube, and whatnot. She was able to, my younger one, Christine, was able to, find some kids at her school that watch some of these. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. My younger one, Christine, she loves all these 后宫传, all these backstabbing concubines and consorts of the emperor, the just trying to vie for the attention of the emperor. Oh, she loves these. 延禧攻略, 甄嬛传, yeah, whatever that is. 如懿传, 甄嬛传, right? I think 皓鸾传. She loves watching these. We are currently watching 新三国, based on the romance of the 3 kingdoms, made about 10 years ago in China. Excellent a TV series. We are enjoying that quite a bit these days. Movies, 那些年我们一起追的女孩, or the 少女时代, some of the favorite ones we watch. We keep rewatching these from time to time and continue to enjoy them to this day. So then, this is our band in Atlanta. Here, our first performance back a couple of years ago, the New Year celebration. Some of you are probably in the picture, but anyways, I didn't know how to play the bass guitar. I just picked one up and learned a few notes. 2 weeks later, I'm up there performing with my daughters, and lovely time that we get to spend as a family together, practicing as a band. My wife joined later to play the keyboard. I picked up the drums afterwards, and then they will take turns, the 2 of them, playing the bass, and sometimes they'll play the electric guitar. Also, this was one of our last performances before COVID for the Atlanta Chinese Medical Society Association, our Christmas gala. So that was a lot of fun. And then 2019, fortunate to have the opportunity to participate in a Chinese debate class here in Atlanta with a coach here. They're very fortunate to have him. And I think it was probably the first ever secondary school Chinese debate team after a very intensive training. A group of 5 students to my my daughters included, went to Taiwan to compete internationally at the 5th annual Debate Asia competition with about 600 other students, most of them from China, a lot of teams from Malaysia, some teams from Taiwan as well. They did pretty well for a first-time team, and then my older daughter even got a outstanding debater award for one of her debates. So I think it was a very excellent experience and really opened our eyes to Chinese language application. So in terms of Chinese debate class, I can tell you it's fantastic. It's a comprehensive language application. Listening, speaking, reading, composition, all of it. Okay, listen to your. You have to listen intently and comprehend your opponent, so to present your rebuttal. Speaking, of course, reading your research assignment materials that other people write. The coaches can prepare a lot of stuff for you, and you have to read those compositions. You have to type up your contentions and whatnot. These days, my younger daughter, she type up plenty of her own contentions and speech, debate speeches herself. So it's a great experience. Very proud of her. And the debate skill can be applicable to any languages. Of course, Chinese debate, English debate, same thing, just different languages. Okay, so with very minor differences. So these debate skills can be applied to their essay writing, persuasive argument, writing in high school, middle school. You start with your introduction, your main concept, supporting argument in the middle section, and then you're concluding your summary paper. Writing paper is the same concept. So this is a completely transferable skill set to any languages, to English for us. It's a group interactive activity. Of course, I talk to your teammate in Chinese, and then with your opponents, of course, everything's done in Chinese. So very highly interactive. They're available international competition. We went to one in person, and these days there are online competitions as well in Chinese. For example, my younger daughter, for her team, now she'll be competing with in a Malaysian competition in a couple months. So online, of course. So
Dr. Du,
yes.
I'm sorry. Here, this is a great presentation, but I'm afraid we have a lot of audience who are very interested in asking you questions. So can we stop here for a moment? Especially we are running out of time. Yes.
Oh, okay. Let me just give me a couple minutes. Basically, these can be applied to college application. It's complementary to Chinese language lessons, and it's COVID safe because it can be conducted remotely. And then, with the internet, then in June last year, I saw a need to give this opportunity to younger kids in the States, late elementary school and early middle school and whatnot. So in collaboration with Chinese coaches in Taiwan, we started this platform called Chinese Debate International to give them this opportunity. And we have a series of different, with the Dongwu Daxue's debate coaches, and they're #1 in the world for international collegiate debate competition. They're like the top. So we have a series of classes for them, beginner level, 8 to 10 years old, 10 to 13, and with the intermediate level. And we even have a read aloud and discussion lessons for the younger kids, as young as 7, who are not ready for debate yet. So these coaches are excellent. I'm not a debate professional, and so I sort of just help organize and find students and recruit students for these coaches in Taiwan, and then and they do their instructions and so forth. So these are some of the material that we use, and these are some of the topics that they have debated and discussed in class. We make up intramural teams for them to debate each other, 练习赛. And so like the last two are some of the things that they're working on. Well, I can stop here, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a great presentation. And we have noticed that in the audience, we have many enthusiastic teachers, principals of Chinese language schools. We also have a lot of questions. So here, let's see, we have many questions, and I think earlier we have two people who sent us questions. So in case that some people are here late, so could you quickly kind of reply to them on these two major questions? First, it is from Noel. He was asking about our, for ABC, is that better to teach them simplified Chinese or traditional Chinese? I know you explained it earlier,
yeah,
but
so
can we just
for
go
those
over
parents
it
who,
quickly?
yes, for those parents, I don't think it matters. Whatever the parents are comfortable with, you know, based on talking to many parents, and I spoke to a lot of parents over the years. You know, these Facebook parents, they have questions. I say, just call me up. They have a lot of detailed questions. I speak to quite a few families, parents and mothers typically over time, and it doesn't matter. Okay, so whatever you're comfortable in, simplified, traditional, phonetics, doing pinyin, it works. The pace of instruction, amount of reading you do, and the amount of time they spend in that CLE, I think is the key. Not the part. I mean, you're lucky to have them to be able to converse in. I mean, or read either one. It's fine. You know, it works for both. So.
Is that better to teach them ABC, pinyin system, or 注音符号 bopomorpho?
Oh, like I say, you know, I've seen people succeed very well in, you know, any format. Really, it's whatever the parents are comfortable in or more comfortable in. That's, you can find resources in both formats just fine. So I personally, I think it's easier to do it with 注音符号 since there's a lot of chapter books and if they have listened to a lot of Chinese already, they're only trying to match the words with the sound because they know the meaning already. They just have to need to know how to sound it out, and the phonetics really help them in that. It can make it easier, but you know, I've seen other kids who, you know, done with pinyin or without, and you know, just fine. So.
Thank you. And the next question.
Back to that, and later on, you know, these kids they can read both language, I mean, both formats. They get exposed to both formats one way or another, and they can, you know, often read them fluently in both.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Nancy Tai. She is the principal of the CCC Chinese Language School. So she has 3 questions. How do you make kids remember the Chinese words they learn? The second question is how many times or hours required for kids to learn and apply the Chinese words they learned? The third question is how to make it interesting to learn Chinese?
Yeah, as I mentioned, creating this Chinese language ecosystem is the key. At least that's how we did it. So I really don't calculate, you know, how many times they have to learn it. You just keep reading and read aloud. That's the most basic for us. That's the most basic skill to learn. Read aloud to fluency. Okay, read aloud. Okay, and read with your kids early on, and they just have to be able to read the text. You know, give any, you know, the standard textbooks that you use here. They just have to read to fluency and at a fast enough pace. I mean, not in terms of the speed that they read is just that chapter, you know, they finish chapter 1 and then move on to chapter 2. It's just the pace of instruction that be fast enough. And you can read aloud to fluency and then just go next chapter, next chapter, keep going and whatnot. So, and then do a lot of extracurricular reading. And that's the key to how I think how we did it and how many parents in my case could do it. They have a library of their own, or they go to public library or that has access to, you know, in California and whatnot. There are a lot of parents in California, and they have access to local libraries with a lot of Chinese language text books. So read aloud, and more read. That's what I say. And then if they don't know it, you don't need to test them. If you read it and they know how to read it, you know that it's good. And just, you know, go on to the next chapter and read.
Great. And the next part is from Abigail. So she posted 3 questions. First, how do we as parents who are interested in getting reacquainted with Chinese immerse ourselves on top of teaching their children? I mean, she learned Chinese, traditional Chinese before, and then now she has to get used to it again, but still this is a challenging job. So she is asking, well, any good advice? The second question is still, she learned traditional Chinese, but now it seems that simplified Chinese is, like the majority. So how to proceed with teaching Chinese with different systems? The third part is, can you share the budget for Chinese materials you used?
Oh gosh, yeah. So the first question, how to get reacquainted, listen to songs, watch TV programs, cartoon with your kids, watch TV. I mean, they're with YouTube and Netflix and whatnot. I mean, there are tons of multimedia out there. That's can be interesting for all kinds of interests. So get online and find something that you like and enjoy it and watch it. I think that's the most simple things, and then learn it with your kids. Relearn some of these material that you knew from before with your kids, and that's okay. So that's, I think, how a lot of parents done it. There's second generations and they lost a lot of the Chinese, but they told me that there's their Chinese got better and they were able to recoup some of the stuff that they learned before. So just immerse yourself in that environment, create that environment. Some parents send their kids to immersion program, but I think by itself that is not effective. I mean, there is some effectiveness to that, but you have to add a lot on top of that. So that was the first question. What was the second question?
Different systems. The
different systems,
are used to traditional, but
I think I mean, you can show them, for example, I may have reviewed myself some of the common differences in the characters, and when they're doing their debate, I mean, stuff, a lot of the end up being in simplified Chinese. So I just came upon simplified Chinese in one way or another, and I can now myself read a lot, and they can, because some of the material that they read end up being simplified as well. So they can look at some of the conversion tables or for more commonly used ones. You just have to keep watching, or some TV programs and subtitles in simplified Chinese. You watch enough of them, you pick it up. So by kind of partly by intent and partly through osmosis. So
okay, thank you. And another question is from Esther. At which stage or which age did you experience resistance from your daughters?
From my daughters learning Chinese?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think, I mean, just part of their life. Yeah, I mean, I might have to say, okay, it's Chinese, let's go read this textbook. Right now we're doing the, I don't know, 7th or 8th grade. I mean, she's doing a lot of, like, for example, debate material. She's doing a lot of, reading primary information herself online to prepare for her, write her debate script and whatnot, look it up stuff online to herself. So, but when we have time to, we go to some of the standard textbook, 7th to 8th grade, textbook from Taiwan, and sit her down and just say, let's, read these aloud and, practice to fluency. I sort of sit next to her doing my own stuff. She read it, and if there's some stuff that need to be corrected, I help her out. I really haven't had, I mean, it's more of a time constraint, not a psychological, say, I don't want to do this anymore. So it's just part of their lives. And so, I mean, we don't have any resistance.
Okay, we still have many questions, so I will try to go through them quickly. Jean, a question is from Jean. Jean has a 5-year-old son, and she is saying that now at home, he has learning a lot of Chinese, but he might go back to school, all English school. So she is worried. So she is asking, since we are ahead in Chinese reading at this moment, can I just let him progress in his English reading at regular pace in kindergarten? Or when can we let him close the gap?
I think it depends on the child's intellect. I think overall, proficient intellect. If they can, some kids, can handle multiple languages same time. You just have to see how your kids respond, and they can do both at the same time. Probably most kids, we probably want to concentrate on Chinese first, and then based on all the experiences that I've seen, that I've heard before, and what we've done, it's probably late, maybe 4th grade and 5th grade. That's when you really need to start, or end of the 3rd grade, need to start working on your Chinese. I mean, on English. It takes about good 3 to 4 years to kind of pull back the English proficiency. And like I share with you, my older daughter, her English was kind of bad in the 3rd grade. So we did end up homeschooling them for about 1.5 years for both Chinese and English. And at that time, and afterwards, when she was in 5th grade, she went back to school, and we still have to work on English quite a bit. And it took her up to like 7th, 8th grade. And like I say, 7th to 8th grade, she was reading 100 English books a year, and captain of a book club and battle of the book at school. So it's perfectly doable. I mean, they need about good 3 to 4 years. And depends on how much they sort of lag behind, and depends on what standard you're using and who you're comparing to. If you want to be, the top 5% of the students, of course, then it takes longer. But if you're looking for the middle of the road, just average, proficiency, that's a different story. That's probably a lot easier to catch up.
Great. Again, I'm afraid I need to pick some questions first. So this is a question from Shirley. She is asking that at what age did you co-read until? How do you ensure they comprehend everything they read?
At times I'll give my younger one this is when she was like 7, 8 years old, 8, 9 years old, just kind of like a reading comprehension test, so, there would be probably, 400, 500 characters, passages with doing, and then there would be like 4 or 5 questions, and then she would do it. And then, she was going through them like fast, like I said, she could read like 1,000 characters a minute, and then she can answer them. I'm like, she basically get all of them correct. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess you understand it, and just fine. Whether she actually just look at the passage and try to pick the answer, whatnot, it works, okay? So, and if they can read aloud to fluency, I think that's one of the key. If they can read the passage fluently, okay, and then you discuss with them, okay, then I think they're understanding just fine. Okay, so if they are stuttering, reading, and they're not reading as a sentence, if they're reading like a word, each individual word, or phrases together, not like a sentence, they are not understanding that. Okay, so they have to be able to read it aloud to fluency. Okay, that's the most basic skill to have, and that's why we created this read aloud and discussion class for some of the younger students, and also for the class, they have opportunity to interact and apply the Chinese, so in an interactive manner. So, but read aloud to fluency, I think it's the key to any program, because if you can read it aloud fluently, like what it should sound like, I think, and talk to you about it, then they understand it, so.
Okay, I think we are running out of time, but I hope that we can have the last question here. Is that okay? So here from Miriam, when are children ready for debate?
Oh, when are they ready for debate? That's a good question. I think, to get into our class, we have screening questions and screening recording you have to send to me, and I'll discuss with the teacher as well whether they're ready. But they, generally speaking, have to be able to read paragraphs and read stories with or without phonetic support to a general degree. So maybe some of the chapter books, they probably will be reading at least chapter books fluently, depending on complexity and the age that they get in, but they will at least be reading chapter books fluently. And if it is with phonetic support, that's fine, so they should be conversing with the parents or with the teachers or the tutors or whatnot in Chinese to a fairly fluent level. We have different level of classes, so we have discussion classes, for example, and read aloud discussion classes for those who are not ready for it. And then the teacher will tell me, over time, whether we advance kids along the way, even though it's only been around for about 6 months, but we have kids who went from, level 2 beginner debate to intermediate debate, and then from level 1 to level 2, and from a beginner, from advanced read aloud and discussion classes to the beginner debate. So we have people who progress students over time, and many of the parents are in these classes. I think we have more than well over 100 students in these classes. It actually takes a lot of work for me to organize these and track everybody down and everything. And we lose some students along the way, and we have to recruit new students. But it's worth it for these kids. I think it provides an excellent platform for them to progress, an opportunity for them to advance and apply Chinese language application, use languages, not just learning in class, actually use it I think through using 学来用的, okay, actually through using the language that you really learn it, and then of course you're seeing other kids doing it. It's like you have kids that say, oh boy, I thought my Chinese was pretty good, and coming here it's like, whoa, I guess it's I need to work on it. So having a peer environment, interactive environment, and these expert debaters in Taiwan who can guide the students, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And since we're about to end, if all these educators in the audiences, if you have other ideas for activities that involve Chinese language application that can be applied towards college application, I think that would be the key. If we have a variety of these activities that the students can participate in, application, okay, not like music and like art and whatnot, that would be great. I know that there are like speech contests or composition contests, but a lot of these, I don't know if the students would be able to put it towards college application if they are more such a more competitive kind of nature, and that can be used towards college application. That would be kind of helpful in this endeavor to pass on our language heritage. So I think that would prompt more parents, families, and the kids to spend the precious resource and time toward that area. And back to I remember the other question was the cost. Yeah, it can cost quite a bit to acquire all these, but these days a lot of them are free, and then there are more and more libraries that have these resources and online resources. You can I've seen family do a lot of creative stuff on their own in their group, and some of them just borrow books, and there are a lot of online stuff they can print out. In fact, a lot of stuff is online, and you can add phonetics yourself. You can print out stuff. I'm not sure they're probably pirated copies, but you can get them online, and then just add phonetics for at a lower level, and then to make stuff up yourself. So a lot of resources out there free these days.
Thank you very much, Dr. Du. And I'm afraid that we have to end here. It's over time. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. This was a great discussion, and I know that there are still many questions out there. I'm so sorry that we cannot cover all of them, but you are more than welcome to email them to me, and I will pass them to Dr. Du. So here, I hope that this is the weekend and we are saving time enough for you to enjoy your family time on this Saturday. But before you go, please remember CAPASUS has prepared more events. The next event is scheduled on March the 13th. Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. All of us know that there are many counterfeit personal protective equipment, and there are all these kind of criminal activities. Last Wednesday, at the Department of Homeland Security just announced they have identified more than 10 million counterfeit 3M N95 masks. So they are investigated like almost 900 cases now. So our speaker, Dr. Edward Huang from George Mason University, will give us another webinar to introduce the types of these criminal activities and to show us the directions in research to disrupt all these illegal supply chains. again, thank you very much for your participation. We end here. Have a nice weekend. Bye. Thank you very much
for coming.
all of your help, Dr. Liu.
Thank you. Thank you.